women's roles in church? And do you ever get people to ask you about that? And what are your thoughts?
So, this is an interesting one because with our modern day, of course there's calls to equality, and I'm all for that. I think women leadership in the church can be a great thing. I think women can have roles that can be very beneficial and helpful to the church. I think they can be pastors. I think they can, lead in certain ways. That being said, we are called to be helpers as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know if I have a great answer for that. I think that's more up to leadership of the church, how they want to go about that. But I think a woman is capable of it. It's just a matter of if God calls her to that.
100%. Yeah. And I think you could make a case that it's needed. Like, women's leadership is definitely needed, especially in today's culture where there's so much, like, preach to women that's so unhealthy, as well as men. Mm-hmm. Like, as far as, like, body image and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think it could be a good thing, but I just wanted to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So on this podcast, we're always mindful of the fact that there's going to be differing views, and so we try to reflect those, not even support, but just make sure all views are kind of, mentioned. Mm-hmm. And just show that, like, we can all live and love each other even if we disagree on certain things.
Yeah, tell me your thoughts.
So the Bible makes it clear that, women should be able to build up and lead other women, and that men should be able to do the same. But personally for me, I don't agree that women should be pastors. They may be capable, yes. But we didn't really prepare for this episode, so I don't have the verses in mind. But for me specifically, I'll just go with, like, the diagram that we have, the biblical diagram that we have, that of, like, marriage. So you have God, and then you have Christ, and then you have the husband and then the wife. It doesn't mean that the husband and the wife aren't equal to each other, but that there are roles. Mm-hmm. So the husband is supposed to love and submit to Christ as the authority, and then in a reflection of that, the wife submits lovingly to the husband. So if you think about the characters of God, you have the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. The Father has authority over the Son and the Holy Spirit, and they both lovingly submit to Him. And then the Son has authority over the Holy Spirit because we see in John that He can send the Holy Spirit out into the world with the Father's authority. And the Holy Spirit lovingly submits because He is both the Father and the Son. They're all three, they're all one. Mm-hmm. And we see a reflection of that here on earth. So God, He creates man, and then He creates woman who is to be the helper for the man. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that they're not equal. They're made from the same flesh. But one's role is to help, while the other's role is to lead. Mm-hmm. And I feel like we see that same process for the church.
Okay.
So the men who are lovingly submitting to Christ, they lead the church, and the women, they help. It doesn't mean that they're not equal. It doesn't mean that one role is more important than the other. It just means that there are two different roles that need to be filled, mm-hmm. and God has specific characteristics to fill those roles. Because you think about it, a mother is more nurturing than a man in most instances.
Yeah.
While men, we see in just all of creation that usually they're they lead. They lead not out of emotion.
Providers.
They're providers, yeah.
I found a couple of verses that you're kind of, I think, referencing.
Okay.
So 1 Corinthians 14:34-35 says, "The woman should keep silent in the churches, for they are not permitted to speak, but should be in submission, as the law also says. there's anything they desire to learn, let them ask their husbands at home, for it is shameful for a woman to speak in church. Obviously, it's not saying you can't say anything in church, but like, well, maybe First Timothy kind of helps with that. So
Yeah,
First
that's the one I was going to reference, but go ahead.
Oh, okay.
No, you're
So
good.
First Timothy 2:11-12. Let a woman learn quietly with all submissiveness. I do not permit a woman to teach or to exercise authority over a man. Rather, she is to remain quiet. So I was raised in a Baptist church, and I was taught too that women do not hold pastorship in a church. It's,
Mhm.
the man's authority to teach, and like you were saying, Dalton, it's not that men are better or anything. That's just kind of the role that they were given.
Mhm.
And I think it is something, like, when you read these verses, it seems so black and white.
Mhm.
But I think as I've gotten older, I don't know. I'm at a point where I really don't know
Yeah.
where to stand on that, because I've heard different things.
Yeah.
So
And
I don't know.
And it's interesting because, like, even today at the sermon, Pastor Corey was talking about how this book is always going to be counterculture.
Mm-hmm.
Like, always.
Yeah.
It was back then, it is today. And it's hard to, I don't know, it's hard to justify that because, like I said, it's not culture. It doesn't align with